Aboard the spaceship, a group of top-tier experts huddled quietly. "Councilman Chu, can you explain the situation?" one of them asked. "Did Great Xia secretly develop this spaceship?" Colonel Chu gestured for silence. "We will discuss this later." He then handed Zhao Yu a set of coordinates leading to Great Xia's largest aircraft carrier base. Within minutes, their transport ship descended above the aircraft carrier base. Utilizing advanced light tweezers technology, they carefully lowered a massive 100,000-ton shield tunneling machine and the team of experts onto the base. After the operation, Zhao Yu steered the spaceship away. Once Zhao Yu had left, Colonel Chu asked Jang Tao to clarify the situation to the team. Meanwhile, he got on a call with Xia Du. His sigh of relief after the conversation hinted at the positive news he had received. After wrapping up his explanation, Jang Tao approached Colonel Chu to discuss further. "Now that the shield tunneling machine is out in the open, we can only operate the underground base above ground," Jang Tao pointed out. "We will have to rely on our technology to construct a proper underground base," he continued. Their leaders in Xia Du were wary of the shield tunneling machine possibly containing a trap, hence the decision not to use it. They do rather be cautious and slowly extend their current underground bases. "We have identified 13 potential sites for underground bases, all situated in uninhabited areas. 9 of them are top-tier nuclear retaliation bases, and the remaining 4 are hidden sites rich in rare earth resources. The plan from Xia Du is to develop these bases on existing structures," Jang Tao informed. "Recently, our team used quantum entanglement to survey the area. Good news is, no one has observed our bases yet," he added. Colonel Chu paused before addressing Jang Tao again. "I have an assignment for you." "What kind of mission?" Jang Tao asked. "You are to go to the uninhabited areas and supervise the construction of the underground city. The only demand from Xia Du is absolute secrecy. We cannot afford to cause any uproar or be noticed by aliens." "Understood," Jang Tao responded firmly. Zhao Yu decided to check in on the Blue Moon district in Chang'e. The construction of the Light Tweezers Sky Ladder production line and the environmental simulation production line was still underway. After confirming that the construction robots were diligently monitoring the progress, he felt at ease and headed back to Blue Moon. Once they left the planet's atmosphere, they discovered space filled with space soldiers. Each of them was busy building a canopy, equipped with massive gear. Their signal reception improved, and immediately Uncle De materialized. "Commander, did the deal go through successfully?" Uncle De asked. "Yes." "Has the Shoutian production line been set up on Blue Moon?" Zhao Yu asked in return. "It is complete. We can manufacture 100 units per hour," Uncle De confirmed. "Is the location ready?" "Absolutely." Uncle De presented a three-dimensional map. From the land's form, it was evident that they were looking at Earth. "Shoutian has limited resources, so we must establish a resource base on the ground," Uncle De explained. "We will gather resources in batches and transport them back." Zhao Yu quickly surveyed the map. There were thousands of resource-gathering sites on land alone, and even more in the ocean. "How many Xia oceans are required at each resource-gathering site?" Zhao Yu asked. 100 should suffice. I will equip these resource-gathering sites with a stealth system and assign combat robots for protection, Uncle De detailed. "Whenever we accumulate resources worth 3 million Blue Moon dollars, we'll arrange for a transport ship to collect them." The value of 3 million Blue Moon dollars was the maximum a transport ship could hold. "Commander, where do you suggest we set up the first resource collection point on the Earth?" Uncle De asked. "Wherever." Zhao Yu replied casually, pointing at an area on the map. It was an uninhabited area in Great Xia, known to house a highly valuable rare earth mine underground. Meanwhile, Jang Tao thought that Colonel Chu wanted him to oversee the construction of all 13 underground bases in the uninhabited lands. To his surprise, he was put in charge of only one, while others were assigned the rest. They made their way into the barren lands, walking through a camouflaged mountain gate into a desolate area before finally entering the underground. This underground mine is 1,500 meters deep and contains rare earth ores that are useful in aerospace applications, the staff member began explaining. "I'm not interested in that. What I want to know is if there's a risk of detection if we continue to expand," Jang Tao interjected. "You can rest assured. We have been mining here for nearly 50 years without detection, the staff member confidently asserted. We have numerous concealment measures in place. Even if there's ongoing construction, anyone passing by won't feel any vibrations, and we won't be discovered. Zhuge Tao nodded, pleased with the response. It appeared his task this time would be quite straightforward. Excellent. I have only one demand. We must remain undetected. Even if it means the progress is slower, that is acceptable. What they were unaware of was that several stealth battleships were slowly descending near their base. A few kilometers from the base, a light screen materialized, projecting an unchanged image of the Gobi Desert. Out of a warship, a steady stream of robots flowed, ferrying various types of equipment to the ground. As they worked, another light screen extended half an hour later, encapsulating the original one emitted from the spaceship. This was the resource gathering point that Zhao Yu had casually indicated earlier. Over 100 sky howlers were already in position, each finding their spot before burrowing into the ground. On the surface, more than a dozen heavily armed robots took up positions, patrolling the area relentlessly. Once the base was established, the escort warship retracted its light screen and departed. Inside the Xiadu base, do you think the aliens are aware we're building the buried city? Councilman Zhou asked with a hint of concern. I do not believe so. Colonel Chu shook his head. Jang Tao flew a spacecraft to the moon. We set particles on it, and 5 minutes later, they indicated they were observed. This suggests the aliens have not made any advancements in quantum entanglement. The 13 secret bases in the uninhabited lands have the same particles, yet they remain unobserved. These particles were set up very discreetly. Even the local troops were not aware of them. Initially, they were used to determine whether they were under surveillance by foreign forces. Now, they could be utilized to monitor alien activity. The double-slit interference experiment had proven that human observation and machine observation would yield two different states. Consequently, the principle of quantum entanglement had become a crucial tool for detecting information theft. The new boss is quite demanding. Even when it is time to knock off, he insists we continue working. And there has not been a word about a pay raise, Sun Fan muttered. Operating the digging equipment in the underground base located in the uninhabited lands. Suddenly, something flickered on the device. What is that? Sun Fan exclaimed, staring at the screen, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. He leaned out of the vehicle, switching on his cap's light to survey his surroundings. After finding nothing unusual, he resumed his seat. You are spooking yourself, Sun Fan. You must be seeing things, he chided himself, shaking his head and chuckling at his overreaction. They were 1,500 meters underground. What creature could possibly survive at this depth? If anything lived here, it would be microbes. Whoosh! As soon as he sat down, the screen in front of him flickered again, startling Sun Fan so much that he bolted upright, banging his head on the roof of the vehicle. Ouch! Rubbing his throbbing head, he glanced at the vehicle's roof, then at the screen. Still no activity. But now he could not just sit back and ignore it. Grabbing a shovel, he jumped off the excavator, marching towards the hole. Who is there? Sun Fan called out, straining his ears for any response. After hearing nothing, he cautiously continued to approach. Sun Fan was on high alert, his body tense and sweat slicking the shovel handle in his hand. Regardless, he could hardly pay any attention to that now. His eyes were peeled wide open, continuously scanning the area illuminated by his cap's lamp. Once he reached the spot where the detection equipment had signaled, he prodded the ground a couple of times with the shovel. Seeing no response, he dug a little deeper. The unearthed soil looked ordinary. Damn, that really scared me. Sun Fan exhaled, realizing his nerves had been on edge for the past couple of days. It was high time he calmed himself. Just as he turned around, the wall behind him seemed to come alive. A hole appeared, shooting out a net. What the? Help! Sun Fan's call for help was cut off too late. In a flash, the hole vanished, leaving the wall as it was. If only I had that projection touch control watch now, Zhuge Tao sighed, leisurely donning his earphones and settling in to watch a short video on his phone. Just as he was enjoying himself, a sudden urgent knock disrupted the moment. Boss, we have got trouble. Damn. Zhuge Tao was startled, his body shaking. Quickly, he gathered himself and opened the door. What happened? I was just taking a nap. Outside, two supervisors stood panic-stricken. Boss, Sun Fan's gone missing. Sun Fan, from our team? Yes, he is in charge of the lowest level work. He did not show up for the night roll call. We thought he might have lost track of time and sent someone to find him, but he was not at his desk or in his quarters. Zhuge Tao furrowed his brows. With a base this size, he might just be wandering somewhere. No, boss. We have surveillance in our base. The footage shows that Sun Fan hasn't come out since he went into the bottommost working area. What? Zhuge Tao's eyes narrowed. His once casual demeanor changed as his curiosity was piqued. Take me to the surveillance room. I want to see the situation for myself. Soon, he locked his office and hurried to the surveillance room. Look, after the meeting, Sun Fan went to the bottom floor in his work clothes, and he hasn't emerged since. Zhuge Tao skimmed through the footage, and indeed, apart from the staff that had gone in to look for Sun Fan, he had not appeared again. Are there other ways out? No, this area only has one entrance. Take me there. Zhuge Tao was skeptical. He needed to see for himself what had transpired. Meanwhile, he pointed at the few people in the footage who had gone looking for Sun Fan and said, "Have them come along too." If someone had indeed vanished from a secret room like this, the culprit was likely among them. Zhuge Tao led his team deep into the building. After a thorough look around, it was clear there were no other exits. Check the pit. Maybe someone buried him there? Everyone was stunned. Regardless, they kept quiet. Forming small groups, they started searching the entire tunnel. Half an hour later, everyone was covered in grime, but there was no sign of Sun Fan. Zhuge Tao was now visibly concerned. He thought of another possibility and hurried back to the surveillance room. After a series of checks, his confusion deepened. The surveillance footage is intact. There's no evidence of tampering. A perfectly healthy man disappearing into a pit. Just then, a supervisor rushed in and reported, "Boss, one of Sun Fan's shovels is missing." An engineering shovel? The supervisor speculated. Could it be that Sun Fan couldn't handle the pressure and used the engineering shovel to dig his own grave? Ridiculous. Zhuge Tao drummed his fingers, stating decisively, "I want everyone to search the base thoroughly for Sun Fan. I need to know whether he is alive or dead." With that, he rose and headed towards the base's entrance. He asked the guard if anyone had exited the base, but the answer was a firm no. Suspicion piqued, Zhuge Tao decided to verify the information himself by checking the entrance's surveillance footage. As it turned out, no one had left. Considering the base was built underground with just one exit, it meant Sun Fan had to still be inside. Either he was hiding, or someone else had hidden him. 6 hours later, despite the base being searched 4 or 5 times over, there was still no sign of Sun Fan. The light-hearted mood that Zhuge Tao had started the day with was long gone, replaced by an intense sense of intrigue. He considered all possible scenarios, even going as far as to investigate Sun Fan's social circle, but to no avail. In the office, all the staff were huddled together, whispering about Sun Fan's mysterious disappearance. In the midst of this, a supervisor dared to suggest, "Boss, could he have run into a ghost?" Nonsense. Furious, Zhuge Tao rebuked him. "Stop spreading superstitions. As a supervisor, you should know better." Scared into silence, the supervisor said no more. Surveying his staff, Zhuge Tao saw that most of them were visibly scared, seemingly genuinely afraid of some supernatural entity. Disappointed, he shook his head and retreated to his office. He documented the situation and sent the report off to Xiadu. Help! Sun Fan was ensnared in an electromagnetic net, calling for help as he lay on the ground. Nearby, a group of over a dozen robots patrolled with weapons in their grasp, completely ignoring his pleas. Fear clouded his eyes. He could not comprehend what was happening. Observing the robots, he surmised that they must have come into contact with alien. Beside him, Xiao Tian hovered, seemingly in a stupor, as if waiting for something. 3 minutes later, the earth vibrated as another robot emerged. It strode towards a mound made entirely of various ores, opened its belly, and vomited a large amount of ores. After this routine, the robot prepared to burrow back into the earth, but halted when another robot beside Sun Fan emitted a red light. An hour later, more than 80 robots had gathered at the hidden resource collection point beneath the light screen. Why have you brought me here? I have no money. I am just an ordinary person. In spite of his terror, Sun Fan continued to plead, hoping that these robots would release him. Of course, no robot paid him any mind. Another robot emerged from the ground and, after dropping its resources, was bathed in a red light. It seemed to have received a command and burrowed into the ground with the other robots. Chang'an, in the Blue Moon New District. The production line for the light tweezers staircase and the environmental simulation had been completed. Zhao Yu approached Colonel Chu to inquire about where he wanted the equipment assembled. Colonel Chu had prepared a 10-meter-tall ladder and a 1,000-square-meter steel platform. With the machine engineer's aid, the light tweezers staircase and environmental simulation were successfully installed. Zhao Yu promptly received a system notification indicating the transaction was complete and 3,000 technology points had been transferred to his account. The only remaining task was the nuclear power station, which would earn him the remaining 10,000 technology points. Colonel Chu had just returned to his office when he received a call from Xiadu. We lost contact with Zhuge Tao's underground base? Yes, 10 hours ago, Zhuge Tao sent a message reporting a missing staff member. But when I followed up, there was no response from them. Have you dispatched someone to investigate? Yes, they should reach the base in about an hour. The voice on the other end of the line continued. You do not need to worry about this. The base will carry out the investigation. I am just letting you know. You just keep your focus on Zhao Yu.
Colonel Chu nodded.
Even I can see the robots in outer space with my bare eyes. The general public won't be able to ignore it. How is Xiadu planning to address it? The think tank is still deliberating. I'll update you once they reach a conclusion. What is in the sky? 1 foot. It's a robot. I saw it clearly through the zoom lens of my Huawei phone. It's a robot from Blue Moon Technology Company. What is Blue Moon Technology up to? I do not know. What I find unbelievable is that they can actually launch robots into space. For the first time, the internet was abuzz about something that wasn't a tech product. People were curious about what these spacefaring robots were doing. Unfortunately, neither the officials nor the Blue Moon Technology Company offered an explanation. Are they installing weapons? Who is behind Blue Moon Technology? Wild guess, it could be Great Xia. Blue Moon Technology's factory is built in Chang'an. So, have we finally risen?
Xiadu's base.
Councilman Zhou was wearing a frown. The recent news from the unclaimed territory reported that Zhuge Tao's base had been completely deserted. Every single person from the guards to the staff, including Zhuge Tao himself, a total of 88 people, had vanished without a trace. All the electronic equipment within the base had disappeared as well. It was as though something had entirely wiped them out. Underneath the ground, aside from the vacant pit, all signs of human activity had evaporated. What in the world happened? Could it be a time-space anomaly? A councilman ventured a guess. That base was transported through time and space to another parallel universe? Do you think it's possible that aliens are responsible? Councilman Zhou queried. Aliens? Another councilman shook his head. I just went to investigate. The particle state of the base remains unchanged. It hasn't been tampered with. The chances of alien involvement are low. It is more probable that they're part of some bizarre cosmic event. Let's temporarily abandon the base and secure the area. No one should go near. Councilman Zhou sighed. If it was indeed some cosmic mystery, sending more people would be pointless. They would merely be delivering themselves into the jaws of death. Help, let me out. Stop yelling, they won't pay heed to you. Observing her former colleagues being captured one by one, Sun Fan's initial fear ebbed away, replaced with an unexpected calm. Sun Fan, why aren't you here? A supervisor barked out. What do you think? On the ground, 88 people were meticulously lined up, all entrapped by the electromagnetic net. Zhuge Tao scanned his surroundings at Xiao Tian. How could he not comprehend that they had been captured by aliens? I am a representative of Great Xia. May I know why you have detained us? Upon hearing Zhuge Tao's outcry, The others quickly sought to understand what was happening with these robots. Jang Tao ignored them, instead continuing to shout. Upon seeing no response, a dread feeling surfaced in his heart. Eyeing the surrounding piles and the hovering robots that had captured them, he suddenly recalled an event that took place over a month ago. 3 astronauts went missing. The blue planet sent numerous probes, but they were captured by robots of this type. Damn it! These robots only follow their programming. Just like what transpired with Jang Tao and the others back then, they likely ended up as resources captured by these robots. The moon aliens were indeed plundering the resources of the Earth. Jang Tao was both angry and frustrated, but soon panic seized him. The aliens were discreetly pilfering the resources of the Earth. Now that they were aware of it, would the aliens try to silence them? Commander, the installation of the protective shield base point is complete. It can be activated at any time? Then activate it. Yes, Commander. At Zhao Yu's command, all the peripheral bases of the Earth, from the thousands, got linked at that very moment. The diamond-shaped light beams started to connect. In just a short time, all the diamond-shaped beams joined together, forming a massive beam that encased the entire planet. Upon seeing the transparent light screen before him, Zhao Yu was taken aback for a moment, asking, "Can't this thing become invisible?" Commander, invisibility is achievable in a small area, but the light beam that envelopes the whole world is already the limit. In other words, everyone on Earth can see this light screen? Yes. What's that? Everyone outdoors was captivated by the spectacle in the sky. A layer of transparent light blanketed the entire heavens. People gazed upward, puzzled about what was happening on the Earth. Many reached for their phones to capture the moment. Is this Aurora? Most were merely intrigued, forming huddles and pointing at the celestial light show. A few, more impatient, rushed home at the sight, switched on their computers, and sought to share this view with their loved ones. To their surprise, the internet was abuzz with similar conversations. Do you have this light screen too? We have the coordinates here. Sun City. We've got one too. I'm in the southern city. Many thought this occurrence was limited to their location. Who knew it was a worldwide phenomenon? It appears like a sphere that's entirely wrapped around the Earth. Damn, could it be aliens? Spherical, surrounding the blue planet. It reminds me of the Dyson sphere. Are aliens trying to drain all the energy from our planet? Before this screen appeared, I saw robots in space. Do you think it's related to Blue Moon technology? This is a superweapon named Luminous Star. It operates on the principle of a magnifying glass reflecting sunlight. It's aiming to blow up our planet. It's over. The end of the world is near. I can already feel the heat. The global temperature will rise by 1 degree per day. In less than a month, we humans will be completely wiped out. Online, there were diverse opinions. Some took it lightly, while others were genuinely scared. Just as people were speculating wildly, believing every theory to be plausible, an official statement was finally released. The sky covering the Earth is a defense system installed by Blue Moon Technology Company to counter the asteroid threat. The protective shield system can intercept all universal threats. Please, do not panic. Seeing this announcement, the internet went into a frenzy. Blue Moon Technology again? Where did this company spring from? Robotics, magnetic levitation, projection touch. The technology embodied in these products is decades, even centuries ahead of our time. Now, they have introduced a global protection system? Blue Moon Technology is incredible. I bet they are the ones who intercepted the asteroid that was set to hit the blue planet the last time. It is highly likely. How can an asteroid traveling at Mach 50 suddenly decelerate and halt just before hitting the Earth? Right, there was a Mach 20 asteroid in the Beer region before. But it wasn't drawn in by the Earth's gravity and crashed normally, even causing a 500-meter diameter crater. The announcement did not ease the public. It added to their worries instead. I'm only anxious about one thing now. Is this Blue Moon Technology Company from our Earth? What do you mean? The technology that Blue Moon Technology has introduced is excessively advanced and spans across many fields. It doesn't seem like something that our Earthlings could create. It's more like an alien. Oh my, Blue Moon Technology Company is owned by aliens? It is possible. Maybe we are already captives of aliens. At Xiaodu's base, tens of thousands of specialists from various fields had gathered, initiating comprehensive research on the Sky Protective Shield. What effect will this canopy have on the Earth? Will it aggravate the greenhouse effect? Councilman Zhou was personally directing the entire operation, testing the refraction index. Outside the base, a team armed with an array of equipment was conducting experiments. Teacher, it does not seem right. One of the staff members expressed his alarm as he checked his instrument. A gray-haired, elderly man was taken aback by the remark. He grabbed the prism from the student's hand and ran his own tests using a heap of precision instruments. When he conducted the test himself, a look of shock surfaced on his face. Councilman Zhou quickly approached, inquiring about the situation. The gray-haired man explained, "We just used the diagonal method to test the Sky Protective Shield's refraction index. The result is..." What's the result? No refraction index. The light curtain seems to be able to absorb light. Or could it be obstructing our testing methods in some unknown way? This was the first time he had encountered such a scenario. The old man's eyes flashed with confusion, but he quickly regained his composure and directed his gaze towards the students. Test it with the auto-alignment method. Understood. The student managed to hide his fear and quickly switched testing methods. A few other students stood by, clutching pen and paper, ready to jot down the parameters and commence calculations at any moment. Teacher, it's still not? What? The gray-haired man was shocked again. This time, he didn't personally intervene. After a moment's thought, he instructed, use the critical angle method to calculate again. This method required two mirrors to be in contact and was not as accurate as the previous two methods. But at this moment, the gray-haired man was eager to confirm a certain point. The test concluded. Seeing the students shaking their heads, the elderly man took a deep breath and addressed Councilman Zhou. Although the critical angle method isn't as precise, any prism should definitely be able to show the boundary between light and shadow. But we see no such thing now. What does that mean? Councilman Zhou couldn't quite grasp it. It implies that this protective shield has absorbed or blocked all light signals within our planet. Councilman Zhou was stunned. Still puzzled, he asked, does it have any impact on our Earth? Will the world heat up? The world would not heat up. It might even cool down. That's a relief. No global warming then. Councilman Zhou sighed with relief. It's not good news. From now on, our Earth will no longer be able to observe the real universe, the old man said, his face grave. What? Councilman Zhou was taken aback. Were not the aliens supposed to ensure the protective shield would only prevent other civilizations from spying on the Earth? How could it end up blocking even the Earth's view of the universe? Councilman Zhou, are you sure we have not let the wolf into the house? The old man said, shaking his head in despair. If we cannot observe the universe, it is akin to imprisoning the Earth. Our scientific and technological progress will be halted. The consequences are severe. It may not affect much in the short term, but in the long run, blocking the Earth is equivalent to depriving it of another Copernicus, the one who proposed the heliocentric theory. Earth's understanding of the universe will completely halt at this geocentric point. There will be no further progress. What? Councilman Zhou was startled. He quickly queried, you are saying our technological advancement will cease? Our technology can probably evolve for a few more decades. The gray-haired old man sighed. But what's critical isn't just technology, it's science. Science is a process of continuously forming hypotheses, using various methods to validate them, creating laws, and then constantly overturning them. From today, we can formulate hypotheses and laws, but we will no longer have a way to confirm whether these laws are true or not. It is like Newton's law of universal gravitation. It was considered the absolute truth for 100 years and could validate the laws within the solar system. However, with the advent of Einstein's theory of general relativity, we found flaws in the law of universal gravitation. Firstly, it could not solve the problem of instantaneous gravity. Secondly, it could not solve the problem of the length contraction of objects. Thirdly, it misunderstood the effects of distant gravity. With the sky protective shield in place, there would not be another Einstein in the realm of science. Even if one emerges, he will only end up on a misguided path. Humanity's understanding of the universe will cease at this very moment, today. I'm so hungry. I need to pee, Mr. Robot. Can you let me go pee first before tying me up again? Inside the resource collection area of the uninhabited zone, someone was lying on the ground, wailing. Zhuge Tao didn't speak. He wanted to conserve his energy until the moment the robot take them away from Earth. He carefully observed their surroundings. The force field had a limited coverage area, and apart from the mine, it was only them. The mine was already half full, and it seemed that in another half day or so, it would be completely filled up. The robots acted according to their programming. There was no point in saying anything now. Once they reached space and communication was restored, the aliens would likely discover them. Suddenly, Zhuge Tao noticed that the newly arrived mining robots, after dumping the ore, didn't continue burrowing. Instead, they stopped in place. His eyes lit up, and he spoke, "Stop shouting. We're about to leave this place." As soon as he said that, everyone's attention was immediately drawn, and they eagerly asked for details. Zhuge Tao gave a brief explanation. "Leader, once we're in space, will the aliens really let us go?" "Of course." Zhuge Tao smiled faintly. "I'm part of the Great Xia think tank. This is definitely a misunderstanding. Once I meet the aliens and explain, we'll be able to go back." The others became instantly excited. After waiting for almost an hour, all the Shoutian robots emerged from the ground. A robot suddenly shot up from the ground and flew into the sky. 3 minutes later, a gigantic warship, tens of thousands of meters long, slowly descended. What the hell? Is this the alien spacecraft? It's so huge. The crowd was shocked. Before they could continue discussing, the bottom of the warship opened, emitting a white light that lifted everyone and the mine up together. In the Chang'an Blue Moon District, 800 million Blue Moon dollars worth of resources were ready. With the assistance of Light Tweezer's technology, Zhao Yu didn't need to exert much effort. All the resources were loaded onto the ship. Just as they were leaving Earth, Uncle De projected himself in front of Zhao Yu. "Commander, the Xiaotians have captured a group of Earthlings." Zhao Yu was taken aback and inquired about the situation. Uncle De explained, "It happened at the resource collection point in the uninhabited zone. There's an underground base there, and the Xiaotians brought back the resources and the people together. In that case, send them back?" "Commander, I have a request." "Go ahead. I want to take these Earthlings to the moon." Curious, Zhao Yu asked, "What do you plan to do with them on the moon?" "I intend to establish an experimental zone and observe their behavior and thinking patterns as a representation of humanity. Once the experiment is over, I will return them to Earth intact." "Sure, do as you please." "Teacher Liu, representatives from the Earth Federation have arrived." "The Earth Federation?" Inside the research institute, an old man put down the instrument in his hand, showing a hint of confusion on his face. "What are they here for?" "Please let them in."
Yes.
The middle-aged student left quickly. In no time, 2 people wearing Federation uniforms walked in. "Professor Liu, hello. We are from the Earth Federation." "I see. Just tell me your purpose." Professor Liu wasn't interested in these staff members and replied casually, "We have a project and would like to invite you to participate."
I'm Busse.
Professor Liu immediately rejected, pointing to the instrument in front of him and saying, "I'm at a critical point in my research. If I leave now, 3 years of effort will be wasted." The Federation staff exchanged glances, remembering that Counselor Chu had given them a method to handle invitations from different professors before they left. They spoke up. "This project can only be participated in by members of the Institute of Technology. If you join..." Professor Liu's expression changed dramatically. He widened his eyes and excitedly asked, "If I participate in this project, will it allow me to enter the Institute of Technology?" The stark difference in the other party's response stunned the 2 Federation agents for a moment. "Yes, as long as you participate." "Then I'll go." The middle-aged student next to them was startled and quickly said, "Professor, we've been working on this project for 3 years, and we're about to complete it." Professor Liu turned to the 2 agents and asked, May I know when this project is starting? Now. Professor Liu furrowed his brow, pondered for a moment, and said to the student, I'll leave the remaining unfinished parts to you. I need to go with them.
Ah?
The middle-aged student looked frightened. Professor, can I handle it? You have to grow up eventually. Give it a try. After saying that, Professor Liu followed the two agents out of the research institute. To his surprise, there was already a helicopter waiting at the entrance. Why such urgency? Professor Liu was puzzled and asked, What is this project? The Federation agents slowly uttered 3 words, nuclear fusion. What? Professor Liu was shocked and quickly asked for more details. However, the two agents remained tight-lipped and didn't say another word. Helpless, Professor Liu had no choice but to swiftly board the helicopter while his mind raced with thoughts about nuclear fusion. Word dash. The helicopter took off with a roar, heading towards a coastal city in Great Xia. If one were to zoom out their gaze, they would discover that at this very moment, hundreds or even thousands of helicopters were taking off from various locations worldwide. They all had one destination, Great Xia's megacity, to participate in the nuclear fusion research project. On the transport ship, 88 prisoners had their restraints loosened by robots. They were granted temporary freedom. However, their movements were still restricted as robots were monitoring their activities. Even so, people were pretty happy. Brother Zhu, you were right. They really set us free once we are in outer space. Next, they should be sending us back home, right? Jang Tao approached the edge of the spacecraft, looking at the rapidly passing scenery outside the window. He had an ominous feeling that something bad might happen. Releasing them meant that the aliens were aware of their existence, and logically speaking, they should be sent back to Earth. But now, the ship was going in the opposite direction, seemingly heading towards the moon. I don't want to be a hero. Jang Tao was on the verge of tears. It should just be Jang Tao that was going to the aliens' base. He really didn't want to go. 3 hours passed, and their colleagues had long realized that something was amiss. They had been flying for so long without landing, prompting them to relentlessly question Jang Tao. I don't know. I'm not an alien. Jang Tao grew impatient. Just as he was speaking, he suddenly stopped, his eyes fixed on something outside the window. What is that? Someone was puzzled, looking at the object that was getting closer and closer outside the window, exclaiming, It's a spacecraft. The White Rabbit spaceship. Jang Tao took a closer look and realized it was the spacecraft that Jang Tao had departed in. The transport ship they were currently on was incredibly fast, and just a few seconds after spotting the White Rabbit spacecraft, they had already overtaken it and it disappeared from sight. Is Jang Tao still alive? It seems the aliens have discovered this spacecraft, so why haven't they captured it? Jang Tao was filled with numerous doubts, but he could only wait until they reached the moon to find some answers. Another 3 hours passed, and the transport ship finally arrived at the moon. Where is this? Where have we ended up? An alien planet. Oh my, it's so magnificent. People exclaimed in awe, their eyes filled with fascination. However, Jang Tao's expression changed drastically. While others were unaware of where they had arrived, he knew all too well that they were on the moon. But at this moment, the moon looked nothing like its original form. In the near lunar orbit, there was now a sprawling spaceport that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Countless spaceships took off and landed at the port. Looking beyond the port towards the surface, what used to be desolate and lonely was now a steel jungle with a constant flow of various machinery. How is this possible? Jang Tao was shocked. The last time he saw the far side of the moon was just a month ago, and now, within that short period, the moon had transformed like this. It's terrifying how efficient these aliens are. Suddenly, he had a thought. Was it possible that their assumption that the aliens' mothership was damaged and they were relying on Earth's technology to compensate for the loss was incorrect? It just seemed unlikely that the aliens couldn't fix their spaceship when they were so good at building stuff so quickly. Especially not far from them, a spaceport encircling the entire planet. A rough estimate showed that there were over 500 spacecraft visible to him alone, and there were likely many more beyond his sight. Goodness, Are we considered representatives of Earth visiting an alien planet? This is a small step for us, but a giant leap for humanity. While Zhuge Tao worried, his colleagues appeared much more relaxed. As the saying goes, ignorance is bliss. They knew too little, so they were less afraid. Just as everyone speculated about what the aliens would do to them, the transport ship didn't dock at the spaceport but continued to move towards the interior of the planet. They flew until they reached a place where a lush green landscape of trees and flowers came into view. What is this? As before, others remained calm, merely curious about everything alien. But Zhuge Tao was well aware that this was the moon, with an atmosphere so thin it approached the conditions of outer space. How could there be such a vast grassland? Simulation technology. Zhuge Tao remembered the deal Zhao Yu made with them before they were captured, which included mention of simulation technology. As the spacecraft approached the ground, Zhuge Tao's shock grew more intense. Their simulation technology was actually so powerful? This park covered a considerable area and even housed many animals from Earth. Lions, tigers, leopards, antelopes, rhinoceroses, and more. Each animal occupies its own territory without encroaching on others. Suddenly, Zhuge Tao noticed a building at the center of the park. Is that the park's administration center? As he thought this, the transport ship arrived above that building. 2. Buzz. 2. The bottom of the hatch opened, and a beam of light shot out, sending all 88 people plummeting towards the ground. Zhuge Tao was dumbfounded. At this moment, he understood their predicament. Together with the other animals, they had become creatures that were in here for exhibition. They should be fine living next to the animals, right? Zhao Yu sat on the spacecraft, watching as the people were released into the park by the transport ship, casually asking, "It should be fine. I have set up air barriers between each type of animal. They won't come into contact with each other." Zhao Yu nodded and, after seeing Zhuge Tao and the other 88 people safely land, he stopped paying attention and continued orbiting the moon on the spacecraft. "I've only been away for a few days, and the moon has changed so dramatically." Not only was Zhuge Tao shocked, but Zhao Yu, the leader of the lunar base, was also astonished. When he first arrived, he thought he had made a mistake and ended up on someone else's planet. Uncle De smiled and said, "Sir, we were always ready to boost our production lines. We just didn't dare to generate them too recklessly before. Now, with abundant resources and the completion of the Sky Dome and laser defense systems, we no longer have to fear being discovered by aliens. Naturally, we can go all out with construction. Sir, our base's main production now consists of 2 types. One is various types of warships. My goal is to expand to 1 million ships before the arrival of the alien fleet. The second type is the base points required for the defense line, and we have completed 1% so far. However, the issue of future resources is far from resolved. Relying solely on trade with Earth is not enough. It seems that the self-built Howling Sky mining sites on Earth are also insufficient. In just one day, the number of Shaotian mining machines excavated on Earth had reached 2,400, but the output was not satisfactory. In one day, only 20 million Blue Moon dollars worth of resources were mined. Although it wasn't a small amount, it was still far from the required 10.9 billion Blue Moon dollars worth of resources for the first defense line. Do you want to continue expanding? No, sir. I was thinking of sending the Shaotian machines to the sea. The land area only accounts for 1/5 of Earth, and most of the resources are actually buried under the sea. So, I thought, why not upgrade the production line of the Shaotian machines to increase their waterproof and diving capabilities? Zhao Yu nodded and asked, "How many tech points are needed for the upgrade?" 500 tech points. 500 wasn't a large amount, but currently, Zhao Yu calculated that he would only have enough for the upgrade to the 3rd-generation nuclear fusion once he completed the trade for the nuclear power plant. He turned his head and asked, "Is there anything else we can sell?" "There is." Uncle De nodded and said, "In these days, the electromagnetic waves on Earth have been disrupted, and wireless signals are almost non-existent. It made me overlook the matter of the wireless network. We can build a sky network on Earth. At the very least, it can yield 1,000 tech points." After a brief consideration, Zhao Yu realized the importance that Earth placed on nuclear fusion power plants. If he mentioned the trade for the Sky Network again before delivery, the other party would surely agree. In that case, let's proceed with the upgrade and get the Shoutian machines to the ocean as soon as possible. The helicopter swiftly flew and landed at a base at Shanghai. Coincidentally, another helicopter landed at the same spot at the same time, and an old man walked out of it. When Professor Liu saw the old man, he was taken aback and approached him, saying, "Old Wang, you're here too?" The old man turned around and recognized him as an old acquaintance. "Professor Liu, are you also participating in this project?" With a slap on his forehead, he laughed and said, "It's normal for you to come. You've always wanted to join the Academy of Science and Technology, and now is the perfect opportunity." Professor Liu shrugged and didn't dwell on the matter, instead asking, "According to these agents, we were summoned here to participate in a nuclear fusion project. Do you know any details?" Professor Wang shook his head and said, "I don't know. These agents have tight lips and haven't revealed anything. Once you two enter inside, you will find out. We are only responsible for receiving people." An agent spoke, extending his hand in a welcoming gesture. The two of them didn't hesitate and followed several agents into the base. Inside the base, they discovered a large gathering of experts and scholars invited by the Earth Federation. Many of them were familiar faces, and even those they hadn't met before were well-known figures. Professor Liu, who had been somewhat arrogant before, immediately adjusted his demeanor upon seeing this group of equally capable individuals. He walked alongside Professor Wang and inquired about the nuclear fusion project. "We don't know either. We just arrived recently." The scholars present were just as clueless about the project. They had no clear understanding of it. "So this is about nuclear fusion, and they've got all us here sitting in one room. Could it be that they've made some progress?" "It's highly likely. Offering qualifications to enter the Academy of Science and Technology and providing houses as well. They are certainly making significant moves." As the scholars discussed, a commotion erupted in the distance, and a group of people approached them.
Director Yang?
Professor Liu widened his eyes in surprise. He hadn't expected that Director Yang would also be invited to this project. Director Yang was considered the most outstanding scientist of contemporary Earth. He had proposed numerous groundbreaking theories, and some had even said that he might surpass Einstein a century later. Professor Liu and Professor Wang exchanged glances and hurriedly approached Director Yang. "Director Yang, did you initiate this nuclear fusion project?" "Director Yang, has there been any progress with controlled nuclear fusion that prompted the Federation to summon us?" People bombarded him with questions, as they were more interested in the project's details than Director Yang's status. Director Yang came forward, spread his hands, and shook his head. "I didn't initiate the project. I was invited to participate as well." "What? You don't know either?" Everyone was shocked. If this renowned figure didn't know, then who was behind this project? While they were discussing, Colonel Chu and two agents walked out from the side. "Colonel Chu has arrived." The scene immediately quieted down. As the representative, Director Yang stepped forward to inquire about the situation. Colonel Chu glanced around, smiled, and said, "Now that everyone is here, let me explain the purpose of your invitation." He walked to the front and uttered a sentence that shocked everyone present. "In one day, the first nuclear fusion power plant on Earth will be completed." "What? How is that possible?" The whole room erupted in astonishment. Everyone was taken aback by this news. "Colonel Chu, please don't joke with us old folks. I have a weak heart, and if this is a prank, I'll be upset." "Yes, Colonel Chu, you need to clarify." As the scholars clamored, Colonel Chu smiled and said, "I'm not joking, and you didn't mishear me. In one day, the controlled nuclear fusion power plant invested by Blue Moon Technology will be built in the Shanghai." Blue Moon Technology? Some experts who were unaware of external affairs found the name unfamiliar. Blue Moon Technology, the company behind magnetic levitation cars and holographic touch watches? While ordinary people might be more concerned about the impact of robots on their lives, the experts and scholars were intrigued by the technologies implied by the other two products. That's correct.
Colonel Chu nodded.
Once the nuclear power plant is completed, I need you to form a research team to investigate how controlled nuclear fusion can be achieved from this power plant. The scholars looked at each other, feeling that Blue Moon technology seemed even more mysterious. Although everyone present was a top scientist, their expertise lay in theoretical science. Surprisingly, when it came to the matter of extraterrestrial life, they were less informed than those who studied applied sciences. Director Yang's expression turned serious, and he asked, "Colonel Chu, isn't Blue Moon technology from Great Xia?" Colonel Chu nodded and continued, "Not only are they not from Great Xia, but they are also not from Earth." What? The entire room was stunned. Each person wore a look of shock and disbelief. Have aliens really arrived? Director Yang asked excitedly, but didn't Voyager 1 expose its coordinates? His late friend had always warned humanity not to send signals to the universe or respond to any signals from outer space, fearing contact with extraterrestrial beings. Colonel Chu pursed his lips and said, "We still don't know if Voyager 1 exposed its coordinates, but extraterrestrial beings have indeed arrived. They are on the far side of the moon. Are the extraterrestrials native inhabitants of the moon? What do they look like? Are they carbon-based life forms like us? How do their intelligence and technology compare to humans? How advanced are their civilization?" People bombarded Colonel Chu with questions. Due to time constraints, Colonel Chu could only address a few key points. As he saw signs of further questions, he quickly interrupted. "Everyone, I can't answer many of your questions. Please refrain from asking more. Let me explain, and you listen. First, the extraterrestrials are not native inhabitants of the moon. They come from outer space, but we don't know exactly where they come from. Second, we don't know what the extraterrestrials look like because they communicate with us through representatives who are Earthlings. Third, the extraterrestrials want to advance Earth's technology by repairing their mothership, which allows them to travel across star systems. Only then will they engage in trade with us. Fourth, once the extraterrestrial mothership is successfully repaired, it will be the destruction of Earth. Fifth, we must develop our own technology to protect humanity before the extraterrestrials destroy Earth." As Colonel Chu reached this point, he noticed that the scholars were all stunned, seemingly taken aback by this truth. He shook his head and spoke earnestly, "Everyone, the fate of humanity rests in your hands. I urge you to give your all. Once the nuclear fusion power plant, invested by the extraterrestrials, is completed, study and research it as soon as possible and refine the related theories." Finally, we're here. Jang Tao sat inside the spacecraft, his eyes slightly moist. After flying through space for 3 days, he was very afraid that he might die any time on the way. But thankfully, they had arrived. The spacecraft drew closer, and Jang Tao began adjusting its speed, preparing for deceleration. However, the next moment, he froze. Is this the moon? Looking at the spaceport surrounded by the cosmic environment and the rising and descending spaceships, Jang Tao doubted if he had come to the wrong place. He had been here just a month ago, yet it now appeared incredibly unfamiliar. Just then, a patrolling warship spotted him and flew towards his location. Amidst Jang Tao's nervousness, electronic sounds echoed inside the spacecraft. "This is a controlled area. Unknown spacecraft, please identify yourselves." "Oh no, what should I do?" Jang Tao panicked and attempted to contact Earth using their communication method, transmitting a radio signal. "I am an Earth citizen. I have important matters to discuss. Please grant me permission to proceed." After a moment, the electronic voice from inside the spacecraft sounded again. "Unauthorized landing. Your spacecraft will be detained in this port." What? Jang Tao was shocked, but there was nothing he could do. His spacecraft was not only slow, but it also lacked any weapons. Immediately, a spacecraft resembling an octopus flew out from the spaceport and captured his spacecraft within moments. It carried Jang Tao and flew to a certain location within the spaceport, where it came to a stop. Seeing this, Jang Tao quickly transmitted another radio signal. "Please inform your leaders that I have come here seeking refuge." This time, there was no response. Once the spacecraft had stabilized, an exit passage connected to the spaceport appeared. Before Jang Tao could control it himself, the exit hatch of the spacecraft automatically opened. Well, his spacecraft was now under someone else's control on their turf. Helpless, Jang Tao put on his spacesuit and stepped into the passage. After walking for a while and passing through a light curtain, he suddenly felt gravity beneath his feet. Standing on either side of the light curtain were two armed robots, glaring at Jang Tao. Earthlings, proceed straight ahead for 100 meters. At that moment, an electronic voice came through the speakers in the passage. Jang Tao breathed a sigh of relief and took a few steps, but the robots on both sides didn't move. After 100 meters, a hall appeared, and a young man was seated inside. There is oxygen here. You can take off your outer suit, the young man said casually. Jang Tao heard this and, without caring about the authenticity, immediately removed his helmet, took a deep breath, and smiled. The air here is really fresh. The young man nodded and introduced himself. I am the security supervisor of the spaceport. State your purpose, Earthling. Jang Tao carefully observed the young man and discovered that he was indeed a human, which sparked an idea in his mind. A Earth citizen working as the security supervisor at a spaceport? Could he climb up the ladder as well? Once he reached a higher position, he would have access to more information and be able to relay useful intelligence to Earth. My name is Jang Tao, and I'm an astronaut from Earth. A month ago, myself and two colleagues visited the moon, where we were received by a woman named Zhang Yuxia. Zhang Yuxia arrived a few months before me, Li Zhengheng said. According to the production order, Zhang Yuxia was indeed the earliest humanoid to appear. She had the earliest model and some flaws. Just as expected, Jang Tao's confidence instantly increased, and he continued, as newcomers to this unfamiliar environment, we were quite frightened. Zhang Yuxia's presence alleviated our fears. During that time, the happiest moments were when we saw her. Li Zhengheng frowned and said, State your purpose. Yes, of course. Jang Tao hurriedly nodded and said, In truth, I sneaked out. The mission was originally to maintain the space station, but I wanted to see Zhang Yuxia, so I piloted the spacecraft here without authorization. Although I don't want to admit it, ever since I returned to Earth, she has been constantly on my mind. I can't forget her, and I want to see her again. These words made Jang Tao uncomfortable deep down, but outwardly, he appeared deeply devoted. Before departing, the think tank had analyzed in detail how Jang Tao could infiltrate the moon's interior. They came up with excuses he could use to explain why he wanted to be on the moon, such as that he was betrayed by his comrades, or that he admired the aliens so much he wanted to work for them. These didn't seem very convincing, anyhow. However, they did came up with something that seemed convincing. Love, it was. They told Jang Tao that he could say that he was so in love with Zhang Yuxia that he went as far as to travel to the moon. Of course, whether Jang Tao could stay would ultimately depend on his acting skills. During the 3-day flight, Jang Tao had been convincing himself, replacing Zhang Yuxia's face with that of his own wife. He aimed to immerse himself in the role and deceive everyone, ultimately securing his place on the moon. So Jang Tao was in love with Zhang Yuxia? Li Zhengheng was momentarily stunned, his expression becoming peculiar, but he didn't say much and simply said, Wait here. I'll report to headquarters. After speaking, he got up and left alone. Li Zhengheng hadn't gone far when he stopped within Jang Tao's sight. On the moon base, Zhao Yu and Dashu didn't need Li Zhengheng to report. They had already seen the live footage. Commander, it involves human emotions, and it touches upon my blind spot. Dashu felt helpless. Love, hatred, and emotional entanglements were precisely what he couldn't understand. They were the most illogical and incomprehensible aspects. Liking Zhang Yuxia. This reason was absurd, with less than a 30% chance of being true. Zhao Yu pondered the purpose of Jang Tao's arrival. Why does he want to stay on the moon? Apart from pursuing a woman, can he serve the extraterrestrials like US? Zhao Yu wasn't stupid. He had pretty much figured out Jang Tao's real intentions. After all, he had come up with the entire background of the moon's extraterrestrials himself. Commander, do you know his purpose? 1 foot. Uncle De looked shocked and could hardly believe it. More or less. He probably wants to infiltrate our base, like me, Zhang Yuxia, and the others, climb up the ranks, gather extraterrestrial intelligence, and smuggle it all back to Earth. Uncle Da's eyes lit up. Commander, if that's the case, we can keep him. On one hand, We can observe how he treats Zhang Yuxia, which will help me study human emotional activities. On the other hand, we can give him the high position he desires and let him pass false information to Urch. Zhao Yu nodded, finding it suitable, and added, but let's not rush to give him a high position. Let's set some challenges for him to solve and promote him gradually. That's more logical. Understood. Now, should we let Li Zhengheng take him to the moon base and have him follow Zhang Yuxia for now? Zhao Yu nodded slightly and said, adjust Zhang Yuxia's position a bit and have her take this Jang Tao to do some unimportant tasks.